Good morning, everyone. This is Chairwoman Lisa Cubit. I hope all of you are well. I am certainly glad to be back with you virtually. I am here just vocally this morning as we've had down people and exposed people in my home. So there are four persons competing for bandwidth, which makes my image quite choppy this morning. So therefore, again, I'll just be conducting this meeting vocally today, but am glad to see many of you here. I'm going to go ahead and dive into the agenda this morning. First things first, we do have a work session that is planned for tomorrow, and that is to continue to receive agency presentations. Jackie, can you let us know who's going to be presenting tomorrow and in what order?
Yes, ma'am. We have juvenile court, which was postponed from the last meeting.
Yes.
We have the water department and the clerk of superior court in that order, I believe.
Okay. Clerk of Superior Court. Okay, so that will be Ms. Taylor?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Very good. Okay, following that, we'll go right into our BOC meeting. First things first, for our second Tuesday meeting, we have our regular COVID update provided by Cobb Douglas Public Health. And considering the way things are going, I will anticipate that will be continuing for tomorrow. And Pam, appreciate you getting that on the agenda. Following that, we have 3 public hearings. The first public hearing is with respect to Noonday Creek Trail, which is going to be a DOT presentation. The next matter also is a DOT presentation, and that is for a master task order contracts for professional services submission. And following that is our public hearing and potential adoption of code amendments. I have been primarily out of the pocket last week, Jessica, so can you update us on how commissioner comments and public comments have been incorporated into what's been presented?
Yes, ma'am. And over the course of the last couple of weeks here, we've met with each commissioner and yourself, with the exception of Commissioner Richardson. We're still hoping to get on her schedule. I've received comments and questions from all but one of you, and am working right now to compile all of those into one document to include the responses to your questions. And some of you had a lot of the same questions, and we've covered most of those as we've had those meetings. So hopefully there's some clarity there. I'm working on that today, and we'll get that out to all of you, so that way you'll have the benefit of seeing everyone's questions. The draft that you see in your packet today shows the comments that have been incorporated to this point, as well as there were a couple of items that were held by the Planning Commission. They voted on those last week, so the changes based on that. And you'll see there's also a document that's included in there that just a rundown of what sections have changed, and then what the change was and why the change was made, whether it was something that was made in response to a public comment, commissioner comment, something that, was just a typo that we cleared up, those sorts of things, so that you can see where the changes have been made. Tomorrow, of course, is advertised as a public hearing, so we do need to go ahead and hold the public hearing. At that point, the ball is in the court of the board. And, if you all are ready to move forward and take action, then certainly you can. If there are some that you'd like to take action on, others that you'd like to hold, that's also an option. Or if you would like to hold the whole package and say, let's keep looking at it and bring it back, then, there's not a deadline on when the code amendments need to be adopted. So tomorrow we'll just hold the public hearing, and then from there, it's up to you all how you move forward.
Thank you for clarifying that, Jessica. I know my concern is how close we are to potentially adopting them tomorrow, and we still have one commissioner who has not had the meeting yet. And you said there's a summary document that will be forthcoming, and I know again, that would be within, 24 hours or less of the meeting tomorrow. So I think all of this is great information. I appreciate you and staff meeting with all of us and taking into account all of our comments. I'm just concerned about just having the ability to really thoughtfully weigh all of the feedback before adoption. I don't know if commissioners have any other similar comments or observations.
I was just going to add, I appreciate the update, Jessica, and I wasn't sure if we were able to make any new times work prior to this meeting, because I know we were looking for that, but I did compile all of the notes that came in from prior into one view so that we wouldn't be starting from scratch with my commentary. So hopefully, I was just going to go through and reach out to each agency director to ask about the different code changes. But if we can, then if I can get something on the calendar, then that would be good versus me doing the round robin.
I know that Renee has been working with your office to try to get something set up, so.
Okay, Commissioner Burrow, yes, go ahead.
Thank you. It's my understanding that all the departments and commissioners were going to submit their questions and all, and Jessica was going to send out a revised summary, if you will, of changes, and then what we were going to hear is incorporated tomorrow. But I've heard from some constituents that they've seen something online or were emailed something, but I don't know that we have, because I haven't received an update. But I think some of the code amendments that we're going to be reviewing and all the ones that have been advertised we'll have to discuss. And I would suggest moving forward with the ones that are unanimous or whatever, but discussion, and maybe hold some of the ones that we haven't had time to review completely.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gambrill?
Well, and I know I had a response to my questions, but I didn't see the response to the other commissioner questions, because I think some of the other board members had good questions that I haven't been able to see their answer on. But more importantly, this whole process, we have eliminated the public from being able to hear our discussion as a board on these code amendments. The chair asked for us to do this via email. Are we going to make that email available to our constituents so that they can essentially know what the board has been discussing, so that they can kind of better understand what we may or may not do going forward in the proposed changes? In addition to that, I know there's a couple code amendments that I know that were put forth that have not been included. The revisions have not been included in this version 2. So I'm questioning if all the revisions have been incorporated in here, and then again, those revisions made known to the public so they have ample time to read what has been changed. And Jessica, I can get with you separate, but I know the fire marshal's changes have not been put into this document. And then also the PC made recommendations on February 1st, while you issued this document on February 2nd. Have their recommendations been incorporated, and how can we incorporate their recommendations when they haven't approved their minutes yet? So we've got some technicality things going on here that I think we need to also address.
Thank you, Commissioner Gambrill. Commissioner Sheffield, did you have any remarks?
Well, just that I think that we should obviously not vote on this tomorrow because there are too many moving parts. I would rather us see or pass everything at once rather than in bits and pieces. And with respect to the public, because we've all received emails regarding the public's concern and not having ample time to weigh in, or there seems to be some misunderstanding behind the intent of some of the codes, particularly as it relates to what we're attempting to do with the LI and the HI category. So I think that if we can, I don't know if communications can upload some updates on the website to give the public an opportunity to kind of review what we have been discussing, because they're very vested in this process as well. And if we have some information that can help them understand better what we're attempting to do, then I think we need to try and do that.
Thank you, Commissioner Sheffield. I'm inclined to,
Chairwoman Cupid, do you mind if I weigh in a little bit?
I'm sorry, can whoever's speaking, let me know who's speaking?
Bill Rowling,
Yes, Bill, go ahead.
if we don't move forward, there's going to have to be additional advertising. Will be beyond the 60 days, which is required by the code section for final approval. And so it becomes more complicated at that point in time. And also within the agenda book itself has a number of the changes, to the code sections that's been there. The code sections have been out in public since December 16th, as well as for the commissioners to review as well during that period of time. But I just want to make sure if we don't approve it at this meeting, we're beyond the 60 days and we're going to probably have to advertise again, which is fine for us to do. Just need to be aware of that. And we might need to look at how we do that in the way that we would incorporate some of the suggestions that y'all are making.
Thank you, Bill, for providing that clarification. In the past, we have not always adopted code or all of the code on the second hearing date. And in fact, I recall a time where we've removed a substantial amount of the codes that were being considered to a later time to be determined. So this isn't something new for us to do that. It would be new for us to do this in its entirety, at least for the time that I've been here, but it's not new for us to delay hearing a substantial amount of code. I do believe that there are some challenges that would lean towards us not adopting this tomorrow. I'm inclined to perhaps adopt the things that are solely administrative or clerical if the board would be willing, but I also don't have any issue in us moving it in part or moving it in whole. Just know that, this would be a lot for us to have to come back and consider, but I think to be fair to the public, to be honest, I think we're due having the ability to hear one another's feedback and comment and to weigh that, to see how that would be considered. And I think the public is due that. And, I know the code section has been out since last year, December 16th, but if we can also recall, that was in the middle of a holiday and also, in the middle of the rise of COVID. And so this is just some nuances that are probably adding to us not hearing from the public, or the public not really having the time to synthesize this as much as we've had in times past. And any communication about us emailing comments versus having a public meeting was just in light of the amount of time that it was taking for us to get through the code amendments during the meeting. I certainly believe public discourse of this is extremely important. And I would love if Jessica's document could be shared with the public, via communications when she's able to compile it. And nothing precludes us from sending out the information that we have. But it's difficult when, again, we haven't had the time for us to synthesize everything in the public to be able to weigh in and have what we have. And maybe if we do hold it, we have a meeting just set aside just for this, so we do have time to walk through all of our comments, in a public hearing in front of everyone, so that there is enough time allocated to this solely, because again, it certainly wasn't my desire to keep the public out of our communication. It was just we would have never gotten through that packet during that work session if we were to have walked it as at the pace that we were walking through it when we heard the presentations by staff. So Jessica, I don't know if you have any comments on how you think we
Well,
can proceed.
based on what, well, let me go back to Commissioner Burrell's point about the comments that she'd received from the public, and what they're seeing is the same thing that's in your agenda packet. So they have access to that draft agenda, as well as there's that document that's also included in your packet that shows what changes have been made. So that's what's out there publicly. With regard to the fire marshal's changes, Commissioner Gambrill, I received those on Thursday, and the agenda packet was published on Wednesday. So that's why those are not incorporated at this point. Again, I'm compiling your questions into that one document, and I'll get that out to you. And certainly, there's no reason not to share that publicly if you all would be interested in doing so. But based on the county attorney's recommendation, if there are things that you are comfortable moving forward with tomorrow, then it sounds like it may be wise to go ahead and move those things forward tomorrow. And then if we need to take some other stuff and re-advertise it and go through the process again, then that may just be what we need to do.
Excuse me. Yes, Commissioner Gambrill, Commissioner Sheffield, then Commissioner Burrow.
Okay, but like in your updates, it was my understanding we were going to hold the noise ordinance to allow them to do more evaluation. Yet if I look at this packet, the noise ordinance is still in here, which means we're considering it, which is not my understanding, but we haven't communicated that clearly to the public.
And Commissioner, thank you for that. And that's something that the police department has been working with county attorney's office on. But as I understand, that is the intention. But because it had already been advertised, we still have to hold the hearing. But then tomorrow, and I'll let the county attorney's office speak to that. But I believe that there may be a recommendation coming from staff to hold that one in particular.
Correct, Jessica. Since it was advertised, you need to go ahead and go forward with the hearings. But then if it's the intention of the board to pull it back, then they're able to do it. But in the meantime, if someone wants to comment on it, you're receiving the public comment regarding it.
Okay, Commissioner Sheffield.
My question is a follow-up to Bill Rawlings with respect to advertising. Would we need to advertise if part of it is adopted tomorrow, or are we only advertising if none of it is adopted tomorrow?
If part of it's adopted, those sections would not need to be advertised again, and you would not have to have necessarily a public hearing again for those. But for all those sections that were not adopted, they would not be adopted within the first 60 or within 60 days, the first publication. So you need to have a hearing on those again. I'll be happy to dig into the code more, but that's as I understand it right now.
No, I just wanted to be clear that for whatever we don't adopt, we will need to advertise.
Correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Burrow.
For the 60 days, that would need to be advertised, or if we hold something tomorrow, could we not just carry it over to the next meeting?
It would be outside the 60 days at that point in time. We're at 54 days tomorrow, I think it is.
Okay. But would we have to advertise for another 60 days? And put it off for 2 months?
We would have to advertise at least for 3 weeks, yes. But that would allow you to be able to gather more information on this particular code sections as well.
Right, but
We
then,
can have a date specific, we want to handle this in May or however the board would want to do it with those particular sections.
okay, so some of them may need more time. And we may not want to bring them back in May, but we may need to do them next year to give more time. So I guess we'll have to decide what we think needs 60 days or 6 months. Once they're advertised and if they're held, I wasn't aware that we had to re-advertise all over again if they're just being held tomorrow, but
Well,
okay.
the idea is that the public isn't blindsided by you guys just all of a sudden deciding to approve them at a meeting in March at some point in time. That they need to have advertisement for them so that they're aware that they're coming up on the calendars for the public to be aware of it.
Okay, so we'll need to have specific time frame to advertise and have 2 more public hearings on the ones we don't adopt tomorrow before a vote.
Yes. Yeah, but I mean, we'd be starting the process all over. So it'd be the ones you don't adopt or other ones that someone might want to be able to bring too.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Commissioner Gambrell.
And I know I'd asked for this in an email, but where is the policy or the procedure on how code amendments are supposed to be done? Can somebody please send me that document? Because I know I participated in this for about 16 years before coming into office, and I know there's a lot of things that people are questioning how we're doing it because it hasn't been done in the way of the past. So if I can please have that document that tells us how we are supposed to be conducting these meetings, I would appreciate it.
Well, I'm not aware of a particular policy that the board has, but we're aware of the code and what the usual practice has been. I mean, I think some of the confusion came up with PC held some of their items and didn't move them forward. That isn't a usual practice from the Planning Commission. Since they're just a recommendation body, they usually move forward with whatever their recommendation is. But as far as the other process goes, I mean, each one of the code sections should have been, if a department brought them forward, there should be a first and a second from the commissioner on those particular items. And the rest of the process is how we've always done it, I guess. I'm not aware of any other distinctions from this year from other years. Besides what the chairwoman mentioned regarding we're in a pandemic and there's COVID and those sorts of situations, but otherwise it's been the typical practice it has been the last few years.
Thank you,
Okay,
Joe.
but I am aware that there is at least one code amendment in here that I know was not brought forth by a commissioner to change. It was brought forth by staff. So if commissioners are supposed to be driving the code amendment changes, I know one in particular that was not being driven by a commissioner. That's why, again, I would like to kind of see, what is the process? What is the process for a commissioner bringing forth a code amendment for change? Because 2 weeks ago, when I asked for the lighting to be looked at in our commercial districts, you pretty much challenged me that I couldn't bring that forward because code had already been advertised. But I'm asking for a section of the code to be looked at. So again, this is where I think, we all need to understand how this is going to be done, how a commissioner can bring things forward, and then also for the public then to follow.
Well, I didn't mean to challenge you. I was just saying we couldn't handle it during this code amendment process since it wasn't advertised. Commissioners are always able to bring forward a code amendment if they have an issue that they want to be able to address through code amendments.
And it takes 2.
Bill,
Correct.
can I ask a question, please, if you don't mind?
Commissioner Sheffield, before you answer,
I'm sorry.
that's okay. I saw Jessica Gwen trying to
Oh, sorry
respond,
about
and
that.
that's okay, but I just want to make sure that she does have that opportunity to respond if desired, and then we'll go to your question.
I don't have any response at this time. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Commissioner Sheffield.
I was just going to ask Bill for a little clarification because this, is just my second time going through this process. And you know, if Bill, in maybe 3 to 4 bullets, if you can describe to me, how has this process been any different from the process in the past with previous boards? I mean, is there something that I need to position myself to do differently based on what I know has been done and what has been explained to me that has been done in the past? So I'm just trying to figure out if I need to shift gears with the way things are being done now versus the way things have been done and the way I've been told that things have been done in the past. Like, what are some of the differences that I need to be made aware of, if any?
Commissioner Sheffield, maybe Jessica could answer that question better than I could. All I know is from the legal perspective, when we review the code sections after they've already been, they come from the community development, or if other departments have brought us into that process earlier, we review them, we help get them ready for publication, and then our office is engaged. I'm not aware of the pre-process that the community development is part of, and if any of those parts have been changed this year.
I'm glad to speak to that, and nothing has changed. This is my 3rd year in the code amendment process here, and we've done things just as we have the 3 years prior, and it's the same process that, as I understand, was utilized before. You know, I sent out the notification back in July that we were starting to look at code amendments. I actually sent that a little bit earlier last year, given the fact that there was so much going on at the time with, you know, numerous initiatives of the board as well as that staff have been working on. So I sent that out back in July to the Board of Commissioners and your staff, also to county staff, the department heads that typically send forward the code amendments. And so that included the timeline for the code amendment process, for suggesting code amendments, when those were due to the county attorney's office, everything from start to finish to the final adoption. And the final public hearing being on February 8th tomorrow. So that was sent back in July. The process has been the same with regard to the items that are staff driven, and again, just as they have been in years past, those items that are staff driven often reflect things like changes to state law, for instance, with the alcohol code, and those do, you know, those are things that are put forth by staff versus by commissioner. But commissioners do have the opportunity to send us code amendments that they'd like us to take a look at, provided that there is a co-sponsor, and we're glad to move forward with those. And as far as the, you know, we do code amendments typically once a year, really. We do that. It's nothing that's in the code, nothing that the law says we have to do, that we can only do them once a year. We can do code amendments as frequently as we need to. And sometimes we have had some mid-year code amendments, again, mostly in line with, like for instance, a couple of years ago, we had the adult entertainment ordinance that had to be adopted. And then we also had some changes to the sign ordinance that had to be adopted due to some litigation. So there may be litigation or changes to state law, other pressing matters that require us to bring something forward in sort of off cycle, so to speak. But we do try to bring the bulk of the amendments at one time a year, so that way we're not doing code amendments every meeting, because as you can see, it can get to be a pretty lengthy process, and there's a lot involved there with the advertising and what have you. But again, there's no requirement that we do it that way. So we can certainly look at that, and perhaps there are some things that maybe have been a little bit more informal in the past that we could look at nailing down a little bit more with regard to the code amendment process, if that's amenable to the board. But, you know, again, we do things in accordance with the way that we've done them over the last several years.
And if I may, Madam Chair, just ask one additional follow-up. Pardon me, Commissioner Richardson. You mentioned, Jessica, co-sponsor. Can you just explain a little bit more about co-sponsoring? What exactly does that mean, and what is the process for that?
Yes, absolutely. You know, essentially it is you know, we want to be sure staff is taking time and working on these amendments, because there's a lot that goes into preparing a code amendment. There's a lot of research, there's, you know, a lot of writing and what have you, looking at best practices, what are other places doing. So if there's something that is a potential policy direction the board likes to or would like to take, or a commissioner would like to take, we want to ensure that, you know, in addition to the commissioner who's proposing the change, that we know there's at least one who will second it before we spend all that staff time and resource trying to put together an amendment, some language that there may be no support for on the board.
Okay. So with this co-sponsoring, is there any type of formal written document to sign off on a commissioner for an item that he or she would like to bring forward?
No, really, an email is just fine. For instance, there were a couple that Commissioner Burrow sent in, and just with, these are a couple of items that she would like to take a look at. They were both in the zoning ordinance, and that she had support of another commissioner. That's fine if it's just, hey, Commissioner Gambrill is going to support me on this, or Commissioner Richardson, whoever. So that's fine, and that's how it's been handled to this point. If we need to make it a little bit more formal or what have you, we can. I don't know that we want to make this over burdensome, but we do want to ensure that we know that there's at least going to be appetite for discussion after we do all that work and take it to the board.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you for those questions. I think that there is opportunity here with all the questions for us to identify a process that allows everyone to be able to fully participate in this. As I'm listening to Commissioner Sheffield, hearing that she did not know of, the sponsorship process that we have for these lets me know that at least if she had some considerations for code, she may not have known about how to sponsor, co-sponsor. And I don't know if the same holds true for Commissioner Sheffield. And, the fortunate thing about being here for a long period of time is you take some of these things for granted, and some of these things I had to learn along the way. But I think with the changes that we've had on our board and a lot of the questions we've had, we have opportunity to pull back and identify elements of a process that make this clear to everyone. And if we make it clear to us, it'll also be clearer to the public. So I'm sorry, Commissioner Richardson, I see your hand.
Thank you. So I think the only, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe last year we had a work session that we dedicated to the code amendments. And that made it a little bit easier for us to go through it and ask questions and kind of show consensus on those questions in real time. And I had agreed, certainly during our agenda work session, that it was overkill because we had a lot of content to cover. But, maybe from a more formalized process, we can look at having a work session be a part of that so that we do have that chance to just do it right there in real time and ask some of those questions that certainly the public is interested in knowing. And I think and I do believe we should still have emails and, back in discussions with staff, but also that type of interaction is probably what the public is experiencing as being different. We're still considering all the same things and we're following the same process per law, but that's probably where the experience feels different.
And Commissioner, we did have a work session this year, just as we did last year. We always do it at the 1 o'clock work session, the day of the first public hearing. So we did that this year, but I think what was different was that it was virtual. And with that volume of information, and there were questions, and we got to the point where it was just, we had other items on the work session agenda. So I know at that point, the chair suggested that we hold some of the questions. So I think perhaps some of the things that we can look at though for next year is maybe we look at holding the work session a little sooner. Maybe we try to hold it in December. We'll have to look at it, what options we can offer to maybe do a work session a little bit sooner, and also to have more opportunity to answer your questions as well as the questions of the board before the first public hearing. But the first public hearing really that's the opportunity, the first opportunity for the public to come out and bring their questions and comments.
Right. And sooner may be a part of it, but it's the idea of just dedicated time, where we're not necessarily thinking about the other things as well. So
That's the hard thing. There's always other things. But I think the work session could have been that time. It was just the bulk of everything. And maybe there's even opportunity to have a work session just on parts of it where we know there's a significant rewrite, and that will allow us to dedicate time to it. This just makes us a year-long process, which typically, it hasn't been. I remember a time where we used to look at these 2 and up to 4 times a year, and then it was dwindled down to 2 times a year, then 1 time a year. And, again, from what I'm hearing, especially seeing this board, they're more engaged, have a lot of questions, and that's a great thing. And the public does too. And so I think there's, again, opportunity here for us to incorporate a lot of the comments into creating a more refined process.
Chairwoman, whatever adjustment has to happen is still going to be on this 60-day sort of time window, though. So just remember that from
I know that's in code too. And that's a code too that also could be, up for consideration as well, the code amendment. But I know that's our current code as it is today. And certainly that nothing that I say today takes away from us having to hear this tomorrow. Commissioner Brawl, did I see your hand up?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I think some of the confusion was because of revamping the zoning code overall that we're planning to do, that will take a year or so, up to 2 years maybe. I had asked for 2 specific changes to come forward now with code amendments. And I don't think everybody knew that we were going to be doing that. But we've always had staff bring stuff forward in code amendments and commissioners. But the 2 items that I sponsored and had a second for, I thought needed to go on this in January, February, and not wait for the whole code to be revamped. So I think there was confusion, or not being, the other commissioners maybe not being aware that we were bringing forward code amendments to get theirs in. But the question I have, I guess, for legal or Jessica is, if we're gonna advertise for 60 days for what is not adopted tomorrow night, whatever's held, can we add anything? Can 2 commissioners bring forward something like Commissioner Gamble's lighting issue? Can she advertise? Since we got to advertise again and start all over with the old ones, can we add the new ones at this time? Or do they need to wait for the next cycle? Or who can answer that?
Well, you can add them, but I mean, they'll be added without the vetting process of having staff giving an opportunity. Some of these might be quick changes. I don't know. But yes, you could add them. It would be the board's discretion with how you'd want to do that.
Yeah, if you recall Jessica sharing that some of these were presented to us back in July, and so staff has been vetting these for a much longer period of time. So I know Jessica will have to see what your staff and other staff's capacity is to bring something forward within that time frame. Because remember, 60 days is for advertising. It's not necessarily just for vetting new code.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, we've had robust discussion around this. Again, let's plan tomorrow. We'll go ahead and we'll have the hearing as it has been advertised. And that, there's certainly with a lot of questions. I hear the board potentially leaning for holding some of the code. Again, those things that are purely administrative, particularly for staff or clerical, or as one of the commissioners stated, I can't recall who, if it's unanimous for all the commissioners, I would ask that we consider moving some things forward so that we don't have to bring everything back, which is just going to, again, add to the weightiness of all that needs to be considered. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next portion of our agenda, commissioners. After we do have the public hearing, there will be public comment, and that will be followed by the consent agenda. The first consent agenda falls under the sheriff's office, And that's item number 6. Do any commissioners have any questions for item number 6? And I see here that there's no impact to the general fund with respect to this. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, that's correct. We're just transferring those positions over to be funded by the North Central Georgia Law Enforcement Academy.
Great, thank you, Chief. Any other questions for the sheriff's item? All right, commissioners, next up is probate court. We have one item number 7. Are there any questions?
Yes, Madam Chair. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes,
Go ahead,
okay,
Commissioner
yes,
Burrow. Was your hand up?
You got it, Sheffield.
Yeah, but go ahead.
Okay. No,
Yeah.
I was just going to request that when we have these type of agenda items, if we can include some type of pay scale for the position. That was my request.
All right, that will be part of the financial impact.
Well, I think with the financial impact, it basically tells us what the salary is,
Mhm.
but not necessarily a scale for the position. Like,
Okay,
I don't know if this request is at the top end of that scale, the bottom towards the middle. I mean,
I see Judge Wolk speaking, but I believe you're on mute, Judge. Oh, you're
No,
not?
it's okay. She's waving me on to go. We
Okay,
can
okay.
certainly get a pay scale for that, but it is not, I mean, it's not at the top of the scale. It is just, I think I see her trying to say something. I just, the scale right now for the associate judge being reclassified to the senior associate judge is 91%. I'm sorry, 90% of the chief judge based on the administrative tasks that she's taking on and the board she's serving on behalf of probate court. Our hearing officer is then, we are requesting for her to be reclassified to 80%, 81% of the chief judge's salary. But we can certainly, I'm just a little confused on what type of pay scale you're requesting.
well, and perhaps that's a question better suited for HR, but when we have, you know, the request for salary increases, I'm not sure where the person currently falls on that scale of the increase. If that person's on the lower end, the top end. I see Judge Wolk, she's saying the lower end.
No, she's trying to say there's no scale for an appointed position.
Okay.
She typed it in chat. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I thought we were having a session of Pictionary or something. Okay.
Thank you, Judge Walk. But there are other requests where we don't have the pay scale listed, and that may be something that is helpful to have generally, which is why I was referring to Bill, because I know, you know, he's always helping us with that impact statement and funding statement. But also, Dr. McMorris is also goes through this agenda, and Dr. McMorris, you can help us to have that.
You want to start and then I'll jump in.
Go ahead, Dr. McMorris.
So one of the reasons that it's on the agenda is that it's outside of our normal process, outside of the county manager's authority, because it does have a financial impact to the general fund. So
Okay.
there's funding available in Judge Walk's budget. It's just not enough funding to cover it. So therefore it is coming back for the board for you all to fund the difference. So what we show in the funding statement is that there is an impact of 83,000 for the remainder of this year, which would be through September 30th. But come next biennial, the impact would be $127,000. So I'll ask Bill if you want to share some others, but for the most part, what the judge is saying is she has a judge that now has is functioning more in a different role, a greater capacity, more responsibilities, and therefore wants to reclass this person to what she believes is the more in line with what the person is actually doing. And for that, I'm requesting this pay, she's requesting this pay adjustment. So Bill, if you want to add additional information.
Yes, and just to remind the board that the funding is just the difference. So don't look at that as the salary. So
Right.
these two reclasses, this is just the difference that is needed to cover these two reclasses. So to Commissioner Sheffield's point, as we said, there's no salary scale for appointed positions, but this would, if you want to know what the exact salary of the new positions would be, we can definitely provide that to you as well.
Okay, thank you.
We could email that to the entire board, what the salary is and then what it would be going to, if that helps out in understanding what the judge is asking for.
Your explanation or clarification brings up some questions for me. Because if this is going to have ongoing budgetary impact, I believe these were stated in the probate court's budget presentation. You know, it's a concern to make this decision outside of that process right now when we have so many similar requests coming from other agencies. We're going to obligate ourselves to this when we have not made an obligation for the many other similar requests that have come before us.
Yes, Chairwoman Cupid, that is why I asked the judge to.
Can you hear me?
Now we can. Go
Okay,
ahead.
I've tried every option. Okay.
Hold
So
on,
the
Judge
issue-
Wolf, Judge Wolf, hold on. Let the county manager finish her comments and then you can go ahead.
Yes, Chairwoman, you are correct. Judge Watt can speak to the fact that she did bring this up in her budget presentation. But because she's asking for it now, we did ask her to walk the halls or to reach out to you all and explain why she's bringing it now and why she feels it's so significant to bring now rather than to wait. And as we have always shown deference to elected officials, we wanted you all to make that decision for an elected office. So Judge Walk,
Thank you.
Okay, yes, Judge
Also
Wolf.
apparently need a babysitter. The reason that we're doing this, we did put it in our budget. And in our budget presentation, we specifically noted that we would be bringing this as a separate item for this fiscal year. The
Okay.
reason that we are asking for it is we have someone who is functioning in a position drastically out of line with pay. Our staff attorney essentially is functioning as a judge. She's making less than a third of what most of the other judges in the county are making. She's signing her name to orders. She's holding hearings. She's advising. She's sitting on the bench right now so that I can be in here with you all because I can't be in both places. And in order to make these presentations to you all and handle the cases at the rate that we are now having to handle them in the middle of a pandemic, she's handling those cases. That creates the need for the adjustment of both the associate judge and the senior associate judge position. And so we are asking for those to be in a step process that's more in line with every other judicial position. We would have brought this as a position during our budget process in the last biennial budget presentation. We couldn't because we were told not to. And then we have tried to get all of our staffing in line internally. And this is so far out of line, we just can't do it. And so in order to do what we need to do and serve the public the way we need to serve them, I have run out of creative options. And so I'm coming to you and telling you that in order to do our job the way we need to do it and have it properly staffed and not expect somebody to take on all of the responsibility and liability and exposure of being a judge to be paid what $30,000 less than staff attorneys around Metro are being paid. I'm asking you to help me run my office appropriately and fund it appropriately as necessary for this position under these unforeseen circumstances when we were putting this budget together.
Thank you, Judge Walk. To the extent that this is pandemic related, there could be some resources in that regards to get us through to when we make the budget decision. And certainly I appreciate you sharing with us the the work that your staff attorney is doing above and beyond her current pay scale, and know that she's responding to, increased burden that's being placed because of this pandemic. I wonder, Dr. McMorris or Bill, could we not utilize those resources versus us having to obligate ourselves to a year after year expenditure to this outside of that process?
Honestly, in the chair that I sit in, I support Judge Walk. I support all of our judges. I know everybody's got a lot on their plate, but to the extent that I sit here, I hear this week in and week out from every department across the county, from the sheriff's office to Judge Murphy, to every department, finance, property management. So I support it, but at the end of the day, I have to look at all those other departments and determine whether or not I can bring something forward that has a financial impact on the county outside of the process.
This
So-
is my
Yeah.
my frustration.
I can't just, it's almost like saying you love one town more than you love the other when you love them all. And I sit here and I look at Kimberly and I look at Ross's department and how overworked they are and understaffed that they are. So I will leave this decision to the board, but as far as I sit here, I hear it every day. And I don't have the resources to be able to do it for property, for finance, for communications, for so
And not one of those is a constitutional officer with constitutional obligations to deal with the estates of decedents and guardianships during a pandemic, with all due respect to everything that everybody's doing and all of the demands on them.
And now I appreciate that.
which is why I allowed it to be on the agenda.
Thank you.
Board to make that decision, Judge Walker.
And I absolutely agree with that, but it's a point that I feel I have to make.
Thank you. Commissioner Gamble, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did. I guess the question is, so are we looking at using fund balance for this, or are we looking to take it from one of the designated contingency accounts? My second question, which kind of ties back into the salary range, is I don't like the authorization to the abandonment of the compensation policy for the associate probate court judges. If we are going to be changing the compensation, then we need to be updating the policy, not abandoning it.
So the reason that we did that is there isn't a structure, there isn't a pay scale. We can go off of what superior court judges make to any judge you want to in any county pretty much across the state, and she's underpaid. So there isn't a scale for probate judges in your comp policy. So I have no scale to provide you. It's an appointed position by a constitutional officer. So that's the reason that it is what it is. I don't have a scale. It's not a clerk. It's not a it's not a tech. It's not a supervisor. It's not a division manager. It's an associate judge position, just like the 11 or 10 associate judges in the superior court and the 12 associate judges in the state court. We have 2. This would be our second that I'm asking for. So feel free to review whatever the judge's compensation is across the county, and I stand by my request. As to the compensation packet, the compensation policy, Tony, when we were working on this, because we've been working on it since August to October to try and get this through 6 different ways, I think, between carryover budget and potential contingency funds and putting it in our budget proposal for 6-8 months from now. So we've been working on this since before Tony Hagler left. He told me at the time that we could update the policy, but that at this point, most of those policies, those compensation policies by elected offices have been abandoned. And so in the interest of transparency and full disclosure, I was following the HR director's recommendation and putting it in our agenda item as opposed to just not referencing it and letting it sit out there and stagnate. I just wanted it to be clear and close the loop on the record.
Thank you, Judge Walker. Are there any additional questions? Commissioner Burrow?
Yes, well, some of them have been answered, but this is in your 2023 budget request. And my other question was gonna be, is there any way it could wait till then? And then Chairwoman Cupid mentioned, like we did in the past, COVID funds to carry it through to the end of the year, end of the fiscal year, and then adopt it in the budget, up for consideration for adoption in the 2023 budget, but to get the increases through the end of the fiscal year. Is there any other options for that, to cover that?
I have been told by
Or
people who
one-
know, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just thinking if the ARPA money or the if that, Chairwoman, you mentioned that. I don't know legally if that's a issue, or I know we used CARES Act money in the past for your temporary positions that were then made permanent in this current budget, for the permitting gun, for that division, in your office. So I'm just asking, because I know you need to do this and I support it. I just have a problem with all the requests that we've had and the needs, and based on all the other departments and other constitutional officers. I mean, sheriff, tax commissioner, I mean, we've all had presentations from all the departments and all the constitutional officers of their needs for the next budget. We haven't had our retreat to look at how we're going to prioritize all these requests and where the funding is going to come from. So that's where I'm struggling with this
So to answer your first question, if you're okay waiting until October for the license carry hearings and the families of deceased constituents of yours and people who need mental health treatment and need guardianships, waiting until October for us to have this additional position, because we are running 3 judges right now. If she should step back and serve in a support role as opposed to an active judicial role until October, and that is an acceptable response for you to give to your constituents when they're calling, then we can wait until October. If we need to be able to run 3 judges and 3 courtrooms, then we need a 3rd judge, and that's the role she's serving now. As to it being in my budget, it is in my budget. At the time we did the presentation, I said that if this was, we would be presenting this, and if it is approved for this budget process, for this budget period, I would be withdrawing it from my 23-24 budget request.
Okay, let me provide some clarification. I don't think Commissioner Burrow, I don't think Commissioner Burrow is sharing an either or. I think what she has asked to see if there's another fund source that can be used, particularly if this is pandemic related, which from listening to you, it sounds like it is, that she wants to be responsive, but
Right.
that we do want to consider these, with the other requests. And I
I was
haven't heard.
I was just trying to go through her requests.
I just heard a very sharp response about waiting and us telling our constituents to wait.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's what she's saying
Not
at
what I
all.
was
I'm saying
And so-
that's the
but-
position that
but
we're
I'm
put in.
telling you, but I'm telling you that's what I heard, and that's not what she's trying to do, is undermine your ability to respond. What we are looking is our ability to be able to respond to the myriad of financial requests that are burdening us right now without being insensitive to your request.
Right.
And so I
So-
would just, okay.
Well,
Wanted
to go
provide
back,
that
to
clarification.
go back to Commissioner Burrell's questions, first was, can it wait? And that's the answer to that question. The second one was,
Or legal to answer, if we can use CARES Act.
Right.
ARPA money.
and we,
Hold on, Commissioner, hold on, Judge Walk. Bill and Bill, if you're in the meeting room, can you provide if ARP dollars can be used to address the additional burden that's on probate court, as we have done for additional burden on other courts during the pandemic?
Chairwoman, this is Bill Bowman. We did look at this as an option. It did, based on the conversations that we had, this would not qualify because the temporary staff was to address the backlog. So what we proposed, working with Judge Walk, is two options. One is a fund balance appropriation, and the second is use of BOC contingency. Both would be general fund dollars, regardless of whichever bucket the board wished to use. But based on the conversations that we had, it would not qualify under ARPA. And under the CARES contingency, what we looked at is that was going to be more PP&E and cleaning of facilities and ongoing for public safety needs. So we didn't feel like that was an appropriate use either. The two best courses of action would be fund balance and BOC contingency to fund the remainder of this fiscal year. And then, as Judge Walk stated, that it was in her budget presentation for 23. So if approved, that would be an automatic carryover into FY23 as we go forward.
Okay, and so help clarify, Bill, are you saying that addressing a backlog that's due to the pandemic is not an eligible expense for ARP dollars?
No, the temporary positions that we funded through Judge Walk's office was to address the backlog. That was we used federal funds to do that.
Okay.
So I hope that clears that up.
Yes, it does. And so if a judge has an increased workload that's pandemic related, is that not an eligible expense?
We would have to clearly document it that it was pandemic related, like we did with the backlog, which was one of the tough sells that we had as we walked through that process. But we were adding additional staff to address the backlog. This is a reclassification, which is the distinction here.
I see. Okay, thank you. I saw multiple hands go up, and I'm sorry, I do not know which one went up first. Commissioner Burrow, were you done clarifying your position?
Well, Bill just answered my question.
Okay, thank
I
you.
was just going to
Actually,
say that we've
Burl-
been working with them for months to try and get it through, and we couldn't do that either. That was one of the variety of ways we tried to fund it.
Commissioner Sheffield?
Actually, Commissioner Gambrell had her hand up before me.
I'm sorry, I didn't see. Commissioner Gamble, go ahead.
That would have been okay, Commissioner Sheffield. So kind of what I'm understanding is because, the states have shut down the courts, it's caused this backlog for the probate court. So what is the expectation of the state for, you to address these cases? You're kind of putting it back on, it's our decision if something gets decided now or in 8 months, but what is the state's expectations for you to be catching up with your backlog?
Okay, let me make this clear. One, we never closed. We went on a rotation to try and have a clean team and a dirty team in case somebody was exposed, but we have not closed. We've been hearing cases and we've been running a full docket throughout the pandemic. Two, there are federal funds that were granted to the state that are funneling through a Supreme Court allocation. Those are being prioritized in addressing the criminal backlog serious felonies first. We do not have criminal jurisdiction. We have mental health and estate jurisdiction and firearms. So none of ours are criminal. So we probably won't even be ripe for consideration by the Supreme Court Committee for state ARPA funds until the third wave, which may be a year and a half from now. So we are not dealing necessarily with a backlog. We're dealing with an increase, a drastic increase in caseload, because it's not that people died 2 years ago and we haven't gotten to their estate. People are just now in a position where they're filing the estates and the guardianships for people who are either COVID sick or died or otherwise sick and died. Our numbers are just increasing in unanticipable ways. We couldn't have anticipated it. And so this is live. This isn't a backlog. This is live action, current filings that are just, in order for us to stay within our 3-4 month window right now of things being filed, we are needing to have enough judges to sign orders, to review files, to hold hearings, to stay on top of things. Does that address that question? I don't have an answer for you, because we are a county court, not a state court. So we are getting nothing from state level relief.
Thanks, Judge Walk. Commissioner Gamble, do you have an additional follow-up to that? Thank you. Commissioner Richardson.
I think Commissioner Sheffield is next.
Thank you. Commissioner Sheffield. See, this is what happens when you defer. No good deed goes unpunished.
Yeah, I'm terribly sorry about that, Madam Chair. No, so Bill, for clarification, your point is that we need to document whether this is a pandemic-related issue versus being short-staffed.
Yes,
Am I
so
understanding that correctly?
there's 2 points I think Judge addressed. That this is not a backlog issue. This is just regular course of business as it stands today. And the fact that this is not adding additional staff to address a backlog makes it not eligible under the CARES COVID kind of federal dollar. So we basically have general fund dollars at our disposal. It's the only option we have on the table.
Right. Okay. But I just wanted, okay. So the other follow-up question to Judge Wolk is, so that I'm understanding, are you communicating that if the person does not receive a raise, or if this reclassification does not happen before October, then the person that's currently serving in those roles will no longer serve the public in that regard until they receive a raise?
I'm saying that I think it's entirely inappropriate to expect that of her.
Judge, please. You know, I understand your position, and I understand that you might feel that it's inappropriate, but I'm just trying to understand what, I just don't want to misunderstand what you're saying.
And that's
So
what
for
I'm saying.
me, right, for me, you know, I specifically want to know if what you're saying to us is, if the persons, or if the people that are serving in these roles do not receive a raise by October, then they are going to not serve the public the way they're currently serving the public. So in other words, all of this stuff will be backburnered until raises are received.
Judge Riddle has and will continue to serve as the associate judge. That will not change. A person who is classified as a staff attorney, I don't think that it is appropriate, if she is not reclassified, for her to serve as a full-time judge. She's not a full-time judge right now. That's what I'm trying to get her to do. She is helping now. And
Right,
so,
Right, and I was specifically addressing your comment to Commissioner Burrell. The comment that was made, well, you know, if we don't have the help there, how are you going to tell your constituents X, Y, and Z? So I really wanted to address that comment that was made to Commissioner Burrell.
So I get
Um,
my comment to Commissioner Burrell, she said, can this wait until October? And my response is, if we all agree that it can wait until October, understanding what that means, which is we will not have that third judge working full-time as a judge, signing orders to apprehend, signing mental health orders, all of those things, not, you know, then if that is what we are able to do until October, then yes, they can wait until October. If we need, and it is my job to run the probate court and to come to you all and tell you the funding that I think that we need and the positions that we need. I was told not to, I didn't. I'm being told not to now, but I have to. In order for me to do my job, part of that is to properly staff my office in light of unforeseen circumstances. And I am now in a position where I have moved all of the shells around and pulled all of the magic balls out of hats and all of those things. And I do not have fund reserve or additional personnel that we can try and move around. I can't do it anymore. And so I'm coming to you as I've gone to the county manager for the contingency. I've gone to Bill and Buddy for ARPA alternatives. I have gone to HR to try and come up with creative solutions. And this is where we are. So to do my job, I'm coming to you to ask for the funding. If that isn't there, then I have to run my office with the funds available, just like, and I completely understand the county manager's position. She is mother hen to all of us in trying to supervise all of these things, and she has to make those decisions. If I don't have the funding, then I have to make those decisions within my office. But I'm coming to you all telling you that this is what will suffer as a result of not having the funding. And that, I think, is my job at this point.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Commissioner Richardson?
Thank you. And I appreciate everyone's position on this. I have two questions, one for Judge Wolk and one for Bill. The first question, Judge, I just want to kind of get a yes or no, or if I need to restate the question, but it's my understanding that this would be a reclassification in anticipation of a large volume of work coming in order to meet that. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Bill?
Yes, Commissioner.
Wolfman?
Sorry, I got it.
All right, so the question that I have from just clarity's sake, why wouldn't this be considered a backlog item if demand exceeds capacity due to COVID deaths?
So the way we're looking at this is it's not a backlog. As Judge Walks talked about, this is a volume that's coming in steadily. And as she stated, that they never closed. So this is not a backlog. We approved additional staff to help address the backlog. And because we're not adding an existing position, we're simply reclassing. That is kind of our distinction. If we were simply adding more staff to address a backlog, that would be a little bit different. But this funding solution was the best that we felt that we could substantiate as we move forward. And I guess that was kind of our standpoint is we reviewed it through the county attorney's office and had some additional conversations with the judge. And we just didn't feel like it would be appropriate under ARPA to use those funds.
Right, but if the volume is due to COVID deaths.
But we would have to be able to prove that the volume is related primarily to COVID deaths. I think what Judge Walker said in part is Cobb County has grown so much. It just in the number of residents as well. So there's a a population impact, perhaps even more so than a COVID-related impact. And Judge, you are the only one who would really know that. So in discussions with her commissioners, it was more of just a volume of data that they have to put out and provide for the residents of Cobb that has just grown over the years. And she hasn't been able to just keep up with that growth, the requests, the needs of the citizens of Cobb. So Judge, if I'm wrong in saying that, please say so. But that is the primary reason it didn't stand the threshold test of being primarily related to COVID.
Okay.
And I'm happy to speak up, but I'm also trying to stay to my yes, no answer.
I am curious to hearing your follow-up, Judge Wolf.
I would say we do not capture causes of death. We do not capture the reason. I mean, we don't, for statistical information, we don't capture the reason for guardianships. So we don't have any way for ARPA verification to substantiate that somebody died of a heart attack versus COVID. I can tell you that our numbers have drastically increased, have significantly increased over the last 2 years, but they've also significantly increased in firearms. Now, whether firearm sales are related to events involving COVID, one could make that direct line distinction or connection. I don't know that that's going to stand up in an ARPA evaluation. So we have all of those kinds of tangential relationships, but we don't have, like, we had 14 murder trials. We had 12 guardianships related to people in ICU for COVID. We know that somebody is unable because they're on a ventilator, but we don't necessarily know what the underlying condition is to substantiate it in the same way that I think would be necessary for us to stay in good standing with the ARPA grants and the documentation. And that's what I could not bring myself to step outside of an honest answer with Bill and Buddy to get us to ARPA with the funds.
Thank you, Judge Walker. Appreciate that.
Commissioner Richardson, do you have any additional follow-up?
I don't think I have any additional questions.
Thank you.
Certainly feel the same, the same tear that has been expressed on this.
Thank you for the robust discussion. Again, if there's any additional discussion, we can certainly have that tomorrow. I think there's a leading of the board to support, but to try to connect the additional burden to ARP dollars so that we can, address, the budget requests with the other budget requests that have been presented. So, Bill, I'll follow up with you outside of this meeting. It may be via email with a couple of additional questions.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to our water system. They have 3 agenda items 8, 9, and 10. Are there any questions, commissioners? Okay, not hearing any. I'm going to move on to transportation. Transportation has items 11, 12, and 13. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Madam Chair, I just have a question on item number 13. And it's just a general question, Drew. Are all the lights, are LED becoming the standard for lights?
They are, each power company has their own program to replace them, but each of them are phasing into LEDs.
Okay, thanks.
Drew, I also had a question for number 13. For one of the street light communities, it stated that they will have wood poles erected. Is there a way that we can look for another material beyond wood poles? I know we're no longer, at least when I've had zoning and we've had new communities, we were no longer using those. Those tend to deteriorate more rapidly.
We can look at that. It would be a cost that we could pass on to the streetlight districts. We're in the process of right now of putting together some potential policy recommendations. I know you and other board members have expressed the desire to do kind of more in terms of creating streetlights. We can incorporate materials as a piece of those policy considerations.
Thank you. But for this one moving forward, would it be the standard wood pole that would be erected that could be used, or can we use another material for this one here?
For this particular one, I'll look into that and
Okay,
follow up.
great, thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, public services I'm sorry, did any other commissioners have any questions for DOT for 11, 12, and 13? Okay, moving on to public services. The library system has agenda item 14. Are there any questions? Okay, and senior services, agenda item 15. Are there any questions? Grateful for all the services that can be covered under that. Moving on to support services, we have information systems with agenda items 16 and 17. Are there any questions? Okay, and moving on to fleet management, agenda item 18. Are there any questions? Congratulations, Al, for the grant funding.
Thank you, Chairwoman.
You're welcome. Public Safety Agency, they have agenda items number 19 and 20. Are there any questions? Okay. Sending congrats to everyone. Congrats to Bill and Randy for that award for 19.
Thank you, Chairwoman.
You're welcome. Community development, we have agenda item 21. I want to go ahead and make sure I take my time with this one. We have a intent to object. Are there any questions from the board or from you particularly, Commissioner Sheffield?
I just want to note that I did support the objection, but I guess my signature page isn't in here.
And I was on mute, but no, I don't have any questions. I worked this out extensively with Jerica before it made its way into the agenda book.
Okay. All right, and Commissioner Burrow, it's noted that your signature page is in the packet. And moving on to item number 22. Yes, Commissioner Burrow.
Yes, my question is, since this salary is within the budget, due to the vacancies that will be covering this, when those vacancies are filled, will that have to come back to us for approval, or will it increase the budget?
Commissioner, this is Bill Volkman. It will not have to come back to the board for, if the vacancies are filled, it'll become a part of the normal snapshot for the employee roster as we move forward.
Okay, so it won't increase or impact the budget?
It would not increase the budget for this year, and then it would just depend on the salary in which everyone was hired regarding the vacancies. So it's typically when we use vacancy savings, it's to get you through the first year, and then obviously vacancies fluctuate, so it would not come back before the board.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
Commissioner Gamble has her hand up.
Oh, yes, thank you, Commissioner Gamble. Go ahead.
My only concern is we just had the budget presentation and we know we had increases in staffing required. So while we're shifting staffing to cover the salary, how does that impact the position request that were made in the coming budget ahead?
Commissioner, this would not change the number of positions that we'll have. It's converting an existing position to a different position so that we're able to be more competitive and getting the right person to lead that economic development effort. But
And
it
Chairwoman,
doesn't change the number.
I strongly advocate for your support for this position. We are a county of almost 800,000 people and do not have a dedicated county staff person as our economic development director. All of the counties around us have a director. I really do think to augment the support and partnership that we have with the chamber, that is great, but the county needs its own economic development, in my opinion, department. But we'll start with just the position. So I would appreciate your support of us moving forward and having a dedicated economic development director for Cobb County government.
Okay, are there additional questions?
It's an investment in the county more than it is an expenditure, Commissioner Gamble.
Are there additional questions or comments?
And Jackie, I will talk to you about that after the meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
Are there any additional questions or comments? All right, moving on to risk management, agenda item 23. Are there any questions? Okay, finance, is there resolution to adopt the budget amendments? Moving on to the county attorney, agenda item 25. Bill, I have not been in the office for most of last week, and I need a refresher with respect to this.
Okay, I'll be happy to talk to you later today.
Thank you. All righty. And the clerk, are there any questions with respect to the minutes? All right, we are now moving on to our regular agenda. The sheriff has the first item, item 27. Are there any questions, commissioners? Okay, moving on to transportation. We'll go ahead and take these one at a time. Agenda item 28. All right, agenda item 29. Congrats, Commissioner, for these.
Questions for me through 31.
All right. Take it. Hey, any questions? All of these are related to Bob Callan, so we'll go ahead and take these in bank. Any questions regarding 28 through 31? All right, we'll go ahead and go to agenda item 32. Are there any questions? And congrats, Commissioner Burrow. Agenda item number 33. Are there any questions? All right, and agenda item 34. Drew, can you talk through what changes were made?
Sure. This is budget only, and so it moves funding from when finance loaded the budgets just at the component level, it moves it down into the specific projects that were that we anticipate in the program. So naming specific, not specific locations, but project numbers for like drainage or sidewalks and things like that. So it just sets up our more line item budget for the 22 SPLOST.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, agenda item number 35. Any questions? All right, agenda item number 36. Any questions? Agenda item 37. Agenda item 38. Agenda item 39. Are there any questions? So I saw Commissioner Sheffield had some questions regarding the values or vision statement to accompany this. Have those been incorporated, or are there any questions regarding incorporating those, Chair?
Just look for board's direction. I can send, I think I shared with you an updated copy, and I know there's probably some additional revisions that we could add to that. Would you like us to share that version out with the board?
Yes, please, if you can.
Okay.
I had great ambition over the weekend, and then I found that COVID can also be accompanied with insomnia, which didn't make me as productive as I wanted to be. So anything that you can provide, synthesizing that. I saw Commissioner Richardson's deck and look through that. I don't know, Commissioner Richardson, if you feel as if that too has been incorporated. So I'll look forward to you sending out your document and seeing any response from commissioners.
I'll send it out here within the next 30 minutes or so.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Drew.
Yeah, I was kind of under the impression that we would be talking about the vision in hopefully a retreat. So that.
Yes, certainly there was opportunity. Just this needs to be submitted Tuesday for us not to miss other critical deadlines. So if there's anything that needs, I'm sorry, Commissioner Gamble, you're on a different line on my computer than other commissioners. So I apologize that I've missed you, but I do see your hand up. Go ahead.
Well, if we're not going to be talking about the vision statement until the retreat, then we need to modify the agenda item to remove it and only adopt the CTP. We know we need to adopt the CTP so that Drew and his folks can get going on what they need to do. But if the vision statement is not going to be something until we address at our retreat, then that needs to be pulled.
Yeah, and I would ask for us to consider what we have here today when we put forward the CTP, as we've received feedback from a number of people in the transportation arena that having these policy statements is pretty important as we move the CTP forward. We have had discussion with Chris Tomlinson, and knowing that we can submit revisions if we need to come back and take another look at that. But I would just ask that we do accompany what we put forward tomorrow with this document. That's why we delayed this from the last meeting, which was back in January. Yes, Commissioner Gamble and Commissioner Gamble, then Commissioner Sheffield, then Commissioner Burrow.
But my understanding, on January 27th, we received an email from Drew with the vision statement. We provided feedback. My understanding was there was a lot of comments and concerns about what was put forth. I have not seen a revised vision statement to further comment or even consider for tomorrow. So when is this going to come out and, provide feedback that we can, all have a robust discussion prior to going on the DIAs tomorrow?
Thank you, Commissioner Gamble. In fact, the 27th did not have a vision statement, which is why this was put together. in looking at Drew's emails, this copy was sent to commissioners for feedback, which I believe is what prompted the feedback from other commissioners. Commissioner
Okay,
Sheffield?
so the
Commissioner
last
Sh-
document I've had was January 27th. Has there been another vision statement that was sent out since January 27th? I
Commissioner,
have not seen a revised vision statement since what was initially sent out on January 27th.
Drew, can you please respond to the documents that have been circulating?
Sure. So I received comments from a number of commissioners, some specific to the document, some more general. Took a shot at making some revisions and have shared that just with you, Chairwoman. But I'll be sending out that revised document, like I said, in the next 30 minutes.
Has Commissioner Gamble received that vision statement?
The original version from the I'm certain that date's correct. I don't have that date in front of me, but I sent out the original version after the last agenda meeting.
That was after the 27th, correct?
Chair, Drew stated that he had only shared the revisions with you.
I'm not saying revisions. I'm talking about the original vision statement was not included in our BOC meeting. He sent that document to commissioners for revision. That's the document I'm referring to. I do not have a revised version of that. All I have is what Drew sent following the BOC meeting. And what he sent, it is my understanding, was sent to all commissioners for all commissioners to be able to weigh in.
And that document was sent January 27th.
Okay, Commissioner, if it's January 27th, it may be, but that was outside of the BOC meeting. That was the only vision statement that was sent. There was no vision statement that was sent with the original CTP that was contemplated for the second Tuesday, or excuse me, for the fourth Tuesday meeting in January. And Commissioner Burrow, I'm not going to continue to go back and forth with you with respect to it. With respect to the date or respect to the revisions, what we do have is a vision statement crafted by Drew that was asked for feedback from commissioners, of which I know that he has received feedback from at least 2 commissioners. Okay, I have Commissioner Sheffield, then Richardson, then Burrow.
I just, my question is, do we have to attach this statement along with this agenda item to get this passed? Because I don't know if everybody had an opportunity, even though it was sent out. I'm not sure where the revisions are with everyone. I shared my revisions with Drew and Dr. Jackie, and of course, as the chair, I copied you on it, but I didn't include the other commissioners because I wanted direction from the 3 of you. So I'm not sure if it's going to be enough turnaround for us to have all of this done. But my primary question is, do we have to have the vision statement attached to this agenda item in order to vote on it? I'm just trying to figure out if it's kind of hand in hand.
It isn't necessary to. There was concern about the CTP not connecting to some of the general policy interests that would be typical for a board to exude in such a document, and particularly in light of the Build Back Better plan and some of the funding that can be associated by addressing certain policy initiatives that was lacking from our document. And so just by calling out some of the things that, yes, if you were to read through it, were weaved in, but just were not identified in a clarifying statement in the beginning of it, it looked to be helpful for us to have this clarifying statement.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is it the board, is this one of the items that we had planned to discuss at the retreat, the vision statement? And is there an existing Cobb County vision statement?
All
I'm
of
just
that is,
curious about
no,
that.
that's a great, all of that is the general county vision statements to be discussed at the retreat. The
Okay,
CTP or the referendum was to be discussed at the retreat, not necessarily this particular agenda item.
gotcha. Okay,
Excuse me, this particular statement.
okay.
Commissioner Richardson, and then I saw Commissioner Burrow.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And just for clarification, my understanding of Commissioner Gambrell's point was that an original letter was sent out after the board meeting when we had that discussion about providing a vision. And everyone, I don't know who all has submitted commentary, but that revision, that revised version has not been shared. So we don't necessarily have the perspective going into tomorrow for what the new statement looks like. And on that, I kind of deferred my comments. Like I put together general comments, but I deferred my comments with the understanding that we would most likely be doing this type of discussion and debate at our retreat. And while a vision is absolutely important, I just don't feel as though we are in the position at this point to put out a vision statement. And I initially had no questions because it's not in the packet. So I didn't perceive that it would be a part of this agenda item and that there was a focus on the board to move forward with the CTP, knowing we had other deadlines to meet, but that at our retreat, we would come back around to coming up with the vision statement that was representative of all of the districts.
Thank you, Commissioner Richardson. Now, I haven't seen the revised statement either. All I know is that Drew sent out his original statement. I'm not aware that it hasn't been incorporated in this agenda item. And so that is a problem. Again, I've been reviewing a lot of the emails that was seen by all of us that had Drew's initial statement, excuse me, Drew's initial DOT statement. That's the reason why this agenda item was being pulled. So again, you know, it is problematic that none of us have seen that in this agenda item.
Chairwoman Cupid, this is Dr. McMorris. If I may make a statement.
Yes, I have Commissioner Burrow's hand, but if you're, yes, responding, go ahead.
Yeah, I think in fairness to Drew, what we got was a little bit of feedback or a lot of feedback from various board members that was very difficult to codify. And you've acknowledged, Commissioner Richardson sent a slide deck that was way more detailed and perhaps even addressing a broader vision and value statement for the county, but also drilled down into what she felt was important for her district. Commissioner Sheffield shared some comments. I think Commissioner Burrow shared some comments with Drew as well as Commissioner Gambrell. But what was difficult was to try to codify all of that into something that they could coalesce around. So none of them have seen everybody's feedback for the most part. And Drew shared with you that it was very difficult to blend all of that together. So that's why it hasn't been shared with as a group because all of it didn't fit into those 4 or 5 categories. And I think Drew did share that Commissioner Sheffield was the only one that took each statement and tried to rewrite it or to revise it to more broadly address those concerns, those issues. I think Commissioner Gambrell also alluded to some things that in hers individually that we shared back with her. But for the most part, it's not anything that we could codify into all 4 of those categories, except for the one from Commissioner Sheffield.
So if commissioners shared items that are pertaining to their districts, how would that be considered into the CTP?
It was very difficult. That was the challenge that we had, and the feedback that we received would be, could we move forward with the CTP with the understanding that you all would discuss this in a couple of weeks? We could come back and maybe add it as an addendum to the CTP once you all have had opportunity to work on it a little bit more together at the retreat.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
the consensus that Drew and I received from the board.
And this is why the retreat's coming up, because again, I wasn't here last week to be a part of that discussion, to know that that would be the time for commissioners to have their comments considered into the CTP for their district. I know the CTP is a living document that can be modified. And I didn't know that we were going to get that deep into the document, which is okay. It's the BOC document. It's my understanding, however, that this agenda item particularly was being continued for consideration of that vision statement, and that was articulated during the last meeting. I see Commissioner Burrow and I see Commissioner Richardson.
I hadn't finished.
Okay.
And then I don't have anything else, but it really is just, I do feel the concern that last time it was delayed for this particular voting time period, but we had 2 days to put together a vision, and I just don't feel confident that that's sufficient for setting up that vision that is representative of everyone on our board.
Okay. Thank you. And again, I don't know where 2 days may come from the last meeting, which was in January, to this meeting in February. So again, I just keep sharing. I know I was out the loop last week, but I'm not understanding where there has not been communication with commissioners for a more robust time frame than that. Commissioner Burrow?
Yes, thank you. First of all, the CTP was delayed and now we're under the gun, and this is something that is imperative that we submit to the state. And that needs to be adopted tomorrow. With regards to the vision statement, when that came out, I think we all had questions or feedback and concerns. And I know we all discussed them with Drew and the county manager, but I too have not seen the revised vision plan, which Drew is saying he's going to send us in a few minutes. But I agree that the discussion needs to be had, because there was not a consensus on the vision statement that we've seen. And I think it needs to be a consensus by the board of what's going to go. And it can always come back and be amended, like stated previously. And I think with the retreat coming up and that being the time to do that and come up with a consensus of what the vision statement would look like as a board, not just one or two commissioners or chair. I think need to move forward with the CTP tomorrow and hold the vision statement for more robust discussion and consensus on how it should be amended or put forth.
Thank
at a
you.
later date.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm sorry to interject. Are you guys hearing feedback, or is it just me? I'm hearing, it almost sounds like little fireworks.
Yeah, I'm hearing the same thing.
Okay, it's very distracting. I don't know if we can just have everybody be on mute if we're not speaking, including myself.
Some issues shared.
Okay, I'm hearing a consensus for us to have the vision statement discussed at the retreat, and for also commissioners' items pertaining to their district to also be entered into the document at that time. I just share with you that there was a concern that has been shared with this board and also with me with putting forward a CTP without having that. Now that we've seen the vision statement and there has been feedback, at least there's some momentum for us getting that done. And there is opportunity, again, for us to update that document. And I'm hoping that when we do have the retreat at the end of the month, that we can have some consensus on that. Just know that that will require us to do some work before getting to the retreat as well. So Drew, we would need your help to synthesize that as much as possible with what you have or with what you can get before then, so that hopefully there's that noise again. Hopefully when we leave the retreat, we can walk away with something. Commissioner Burrow, I see your hand up.
I would just like to see the vision statement, if there was one that was attached to the CTP the last time we updated it. If you have anything, Drew.
Okay.
I'll summarize what was in the previous CTP, as well as kind of current version of vision values for this one, as well as the various comments that we've received from each of the commissioners.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
And Chairwoman, just so I'm clear, we would revise this to just adopt the CTP. Was that your direction?
Yes, the CTP needs to move forward. I was under the impression with the documents that have been received that this has been incorporated based off of discussions from the last meeting. Since it hasn't, we are truly under the gun. We were under the gun when it wasn't submitted last week, so we do need to move this forward, as Commissioner Burrow has underscored. So that would be the direction.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. If everyone again can have a meeting.
Chairwoman, everybody is muted.
Including myself. Thank you.
Yeah, everybody is muted according to Kimberly. So I don't know. We don't know what that noise is, but we don't hear it.
Okay. I don't hear it right now. It's odd.
And she hears it, I hear it. It's like everybody. Okay.
Okay, we are now moving on to agenda item number 39. Excuse me, this is incorrect. We're moving on to agenda item 40 for property management support services. Are there any questions? All right, moving on to agenda item 41. Are there any questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So essentially, this is the board taking a vote for the first step of putting the 930 to the voters, correct?
Drew, can you please respond?
It would. So this item amends the it does two things. So the first thing it does, it amends the 2020 ATL regional transit plan for the purposes of then being able to keep the option open for a 930 referendum, because all projects on a referendum do need to be part of that Atlanta Regional Transit Plan according to the state law on that. It also authorizes staff to submit projects for the 22 ARTP, which there's a current open call for projects. That call for projects, completion of that plan would not be done in time for a referendum in November.
So, Drew, with a vote on this, is this pretty much signaling that we will be doing the 5-year, even though it hasn't been a formal policy vote of the board? Is this essentially a vote stating that this is the direction the board would be taking then? Because again, I don't mind submitting some of the projects that are in the CTP currently onto the ATL regional transit, because there's some of them I agree with, but I don't agree with all of them. So is This essentially stating, you know, that we're going to support putting the 9:30 on the November ballot.
It, what this does is it allows for the amendment of the existing regional transit plan and submitting for the new regional transit plan. There would be subsequent votes to call for a referendum. So that would be under a separate action. But it leaves that ability open for a 9:30 referendum this year.
Okay, I'll discuss this more offline with you.
Okay.
Are there additional questions?
I just think I'm totally confused on this because this has to be decided of what way we're going on a referendum this year or 2024, the 5-year plan or the 30-year plan. And I mean, how can it keep coming back and we're not, I mean, to get it on a referendum either way, whatever plan is. And it's my understanding the CTP is separate from the mobility splost. So
Yes, Commissioner.
We'll have to discuss offline because I have too many questions on that.
Yes,
I'm
Commissioner.
not sure what this agenda item is accomplishing.
It's my understanding by putting our projects forward, it enables us to consider those projects should a referendum move forward.
But we're not committing to either
No,
one.
ma'am. There's subsequent votes that would have, as Drew stated, there's subsequent decisions that would have to be made by the board. Commissioner Richardson.
Drew, this agenda item effectively submits the list of projects that have been contemplated in the CTP to the ARTP. And by having that submission in the ARTP, those projects then qualify us to be able to pursue funding in other buckets. And that background is only stating that that's what it's allowing us to do, qualification.
Thank you, Commissioner Richardson. You're right. And it's not just the referendum that can be other buckets. There are other buckets of funding that we become eligible for by this going to the ATL for consideration. Yes, Commissioner Gamble.
So, Drew, have all these projects been shared with our 6 cities? Because I know when the conversation was had, what was it, a couple weeks ago, if the board was going to do, you know, the 5-year, the 170 or the 930, there was a lot of confusion as far as which projects were on which potential referendum. So do all of our cities clearly understand all the projects that are being put forth with this agenda item?
Yes, so we've met with the cities a couple different times, and what is presented in the CTP, which then subsequently in this agenda item, is what was called the balance scenario during public outreach back in November. We also had meetings with the cities and have been invited to speak at some of the city councils just to talk about what is in the plan. So they have seen these proposals as far as the actual projects themselves, kind of the overall scenario. Maybe not down to the project level where we talk about project A, B, and C, but we have presented that scenario to them.
Are there additional questions? Following this, we have our regular second public comment, and then we have 2 appointments to the Cobb Workforce Development Board. That concludes the rest of this meeting unless any of you have any additional questions. Okay, please note that we do not have exec today. And so I will plan on seeing each of you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And don't forget, we have a work session to follow at 1:30 p.m.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
You guys